Hi boys and girls. Today we're going to go ahead and look at a video about comparing decimals and then ordering decimals. Okay, so if you're comparing decimals, when we compare, you are going to write either greater than, less than, or equal to when you're comparing something. The one thing I want you guys to notice, and I talked about this, is that the less than sign looks like a squished L, and less than starts with L. So that's how you know that you've got a less than sign. The other one, opposite of a L, is going to be the greater than sign. All right, so here's our problem. We've got 437 thousandths, and we're going to compare that to 34 hundredths. Since we have thousands and hundredths, we've got two different things, and we're going to set them up on a place value chart, or we can go ahead and line our numbers up carefully. Super important, you want to line your decimal points up, and then you go in and fill in the rest. Okay, so right now we don't want to start comparing it yet because we're comparing thousandths to hundredths. So what we want to do is make an equivalent decimal, and we can do that by adding a placeholder 0 here. 34 hundredths is really equivalent to 340 thousandths. Now we're comparing thousands to thousands, or apples to apples. They're kind of the same thing. We're going to start in the highest place value, and we're going to go ahead and compare them. Excuse me. I usually use a paper or something to go ahead and keep myself organized. So the highest place value is the ones. Since these are the same, they're not going to help us make any sort of comparison at all. We're looking for the first place that they are different. Aha! In the tenths place, we've got a 4 and a 3. You're going to read it this way, top to bottom. 4 is greater than 3, less than 3, or equal to 3. 4 is greater than 3. So I'm going to write that right there. And then you stop. You don't have to compare the rest. Since you know that the 4 is greater than 3, you also know that this top number here is greater than 340 thousandths. That's it for that. Let's take a look at ordering decimals. This can get a little bit more confusing. So we're going to look at this problem. What is the order of, you've got 4 different numbers, 1 and 383 thousandths, 1 and 321 thousandths, 1 and 456 thousandths, and 1 and 32 hundredths. And they want us to put this in order from greatest to least. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm going to go greatest to least, which we're thinking biggest to smallest, right? If you know greatest to least, you're fine. If you want to write down a little hint that you're going big to small, go ahead. I'm going to draw a place value chart, just a quick one down here. I'm going to put a spot for my decimal point. This would be the tenths, the hundredths, the thousandths, and I'm going to leave a spot for some numbers that I'm going to write. Over here we've got our ones, tens, hundreds. Depending on how big the number is, you can make that longer, but we don't really have to. We've got some smaller numbers. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take all of these and put them in the place value chart. So 1 and 383 thousandths. Now I'm going to put this one. You definitely want to put them in order. 1 and 321 thousandths. Just keep yourself organized. 1 and 456 thousandths. And your last one, 1 and 32 hundredths. Again, before we start, we're just going to put one placeholder 0. So we're working with all thousandths. And this time, it's not a matter of just comparing. We want to look at all of these. We want to find the biggest to the smallest. So we're going to go ahead and label them with kind of a ranking as we do this. All right. So again, look in your highest place value. It's the ones, but they're all the same. Doesn't help us at all. We're going to move to the tenths. All right, so we've got a bunch of 3s, and then we've got 1 4. So that's going to tell you that this third number here is going to be the greatest because it's got a 4 in the tenths place. We want to go greatest to least, so that means that the first one we're going to write is going to be this one. Now, I'm done with it, right? I've decided I'm going to write it first in my answer, so I'm finished with it. If I look at the numbers here, I want to re-look. They're all 3s, so I can't learn anything about those other 3 numbers by the tenths place. I'm going to move over to the hundredths place. I've got an 8, a 2, and a 2, because I'm skipping that one that I already used. Looking greatest to least. Aha, that's going to be the second one, because it has an 8 in the tenths place. We've got the same sort of situation. We've got 2 2s. Doesn't help us. So we're actually at the very end. We've got a 1 and a 0. So we're going biggest to smallest. Since the 1 is bigger, that gets spot number 3, and the 0 gets spot number 4. Now we're ready to go ahead and write our answer. All right, I'm going to write it right up here. Okay, so if this was your line for your answer, this can get a little bit messy. The first one was 1 and 456 thousandths. Separate it with a semicolon. Number 2, 1 and 383 thousandths. If you've scribbled all over yours like I have with my thinking, you can always look back up at the top for the correct numbers. Number 3, 1 and 321 thousandths. And our very last one, we're not going to write 1 and 320 thousandths. We're just going to write the original number, which is 1 and 32 hundredths. And you're done. And that's it. So the only thing I want to caution you is to remember to take really good care of writing. Is it going to be greatest to least, or is it least to greatest when they ask you to do it? And double check and make sure that you answered it in the right order, because it's really easy to do all of this work and then to write it backwards. So be careful and check your work on that. All right.